In today's video, I'm going to share with you my workflow for processing raw bird photos in Adobe Camera Raw. Now, I use Adobe Camera Raw because it has most of the tools I need to complete a photo edit without having to go to other programs. Let's complete a couple photo edits for demonstration. So here we have a photo of a western grebe. Sandy and I went out and photographed these last spring, and they're a very fun species to watch. Now you'll notice that this photo has a tilt to it, and that's because I was frantically trying to get my tripod at water level to get a picture of this bird. Okay, let's get into this. Now the first thing we have to do is level out this bird. So you go over to the cropping tool, and we get this straighten tool, and I'm going to use this water level as the reference because you can see some riffles in there. This is probably going to be the most accurate way to level it. Just a one-click thing. If it still looks a little bit off, you can kind of see the line there. Use the grids, and you can move it to where it looks really good. Okay, so there we go there. Now, I kind of want to crop it in a little bit further, so I'm going to modify this. And I'm going to pay attention to the water line. And I'm going to have that water line only take up the bottom third of this grid, and the other 2/3 is going to be taken up by the background. So let's pull this up maybe just a tad, and let's crop in just a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Looks good to me. Okay, now that we have that done, we have this dark section right here that I'm going to try to lighten up. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to go up to the black slider. I'm going to pull that up a little bit. Then I'm going to go to the shadow slider. Pull that up a little bit. I'm not going to go too far with that. And then the exposure. Bring that up a little bit. Now it's a little bit lighter in this section. Okay, now I'm going to zoom it in, and I'm going to check for the noise. So we have noise all around this. It's not really that bad. But we're going to go ahead and use this wonderful tool in Adobe Camera Raw, the denoise tool. This is pretty amazing in here, and you can see the difference this is going to make. Okay, now it's finished, and we have no noise. So the next step I'm going to take is I'm going to go up to the texture slider. I'm going to pull that to the right, and you can see how it brings that detail right back into the grebe. And I think that looks fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and zoom out, and it's already looking pretty good. Okay, we can see now that we have some distracting spots on the water right here. So we're going to go over here to the spot remover tool, and we're going to paint over these and get rid of them. And then we have a little line back here. Paint over that. Okay, now that we have that cleaned up, let's go ahead and add some masks. And what I like to do is use linear gradient. And we're going to pull this down. Let's go right to where the red intersects with the top of the water right here. And we're going to use an exposure slider. Bring that light up. Then we're going to add another linear gradient. And we're going to come from the bottom. And this time we're only going to cover just the water surface, and it's to mimic the light that's coming from the top. So let's go to the exposure slider, bring it up a little bit. And now you can already see that the bird is popping from the background. Okay, and then what I like to do at this stage is I like to go to the dehaze slider. And what this is going to do is add some really good contrast and enhance the colors a little bit. Okay, once we get that down, then we can bring it back up with the exposure just to right about there. And I think that looks fantastic. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now to save it in Adobe Camera Raw, you go over to these three dots on the right-hand side here, click it, go down to Save Image, and Save as JPEG. And then it's going to automatically save it to whatever folder you had chosen. So that's that edit. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, next we have a picture of a lazuli bunting. We love watching these come back every spring. Such a beautiful bird. So let's get to editing this. Okay, what I want to do with this one is I want to crop it in, and let's say we're going to put it on like an Instagram or one of those formats. So I'm going to choose a 4x5 and I'm going to zoom it in. I kind of prefer my photograph zoomed in just a little bit so you can actually see the bird. There's nothing wrong with environmental shots and stuff like that too. Occasionally I'll do those. So for this one, we're just going to zoom it to this composition. Okay, so we have some dark areas here, and we're going to go ahead and light them up like we did on the last edit. So let's slide the black slider over the shadows a little bit, then the exposure, bring that up. Okay, now we're going to zoom it in, and we're going to check the noise on this image as well. And it almost always needs denoise. Sometimes I don't denoise it, but these have a little bit of noise in them, so I'm going to denoise this. Okay, now that's done. You can see some of the textures and the feathers have popped out. Very good. I'm still going to go up to textures and give it just a little tiny bit of punch. Not too much, doesn't really need it. The detail's great. So let's zoom this out, and that's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so you'll notice we have a couple extra limbs in here that I don't want in there. So I'm going to go over here to the spot removal tool, select the clone stamp, then we come down here and I'm going to draw a line, or I'm going to sample this parallel to the stick so the colors are really close, and I'm going to do it on the long side here. So I'm going to alt click, and then I'm going to carefully drag this down the limb and release. And it got rid of it pretty good. See, it's sampling right here to replace this right here. So the colors were so close that it worked really good. So we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, now we have that done. Okay, so we have the photo right here with the branches gone. Now what we want to do is we have a brown spot right here that's a little bit distracting because everything over here is bright green. So what we want to do in this case is I'm going to take a linear gradient and I'm going to pull it from this corner down to about the branch. Because if we go any further, then we're going to continue to make this even brighter and brighter, and it'll never catch up. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to try the contrast slider to pull it up a little bit. Go to the green magenta slider, pull this up this way, and then we'll go down to the hue and pull it over towards the green. We can't do too much. Then we'll go to the temperature and the saturation a little bit. Back to the exposure. The white slider. And then now that we have it bright, we might be able to pull it down a little bit further to kind of blend it in a little bit better. And go back to the hue slider again and kind of play around with the colors till they look pretty good. I'd say that's pretty good. Now, once we have this done, this is affecting the bird. So we want to subtract the bird from the scenario. So we go subtract, select subject, and then the bird returns back to its normal color. So now we have a little bit more even colors here. And we're going to go a little step further here. Back to exposure, and we're going to bring it up just a little bit. And then we're going to go down to dehaze. Give it some contrast. And then it looks like the highlights are a little bit hot. So let's go up to the highlights and maybe pull them down. But you have to be careful messing with the highlights because you might start turning the white into gray. So that's not going to be a good result. You can also use the whites and pull them down a little bit, but I think I'm going to leave the whites centered. I think that looks pretty good. Let's try another linear gradient from the top. I usually pull it down to the bottom where it's like 50% with a gradient from the top, the light source. So let's go ahead and pull the exposure up a little bit. And let's do the highlights down just a tad. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. There's a couple dark spots in it still. We can pull this, the black slider a little bit, and then we can push the contrast over just a tad, just so we can see those details in there. So we're going to leave it alone because you can keep editing, and then pretty soon you're going to have to start over because it looks a little overdone. And this one's reaching that point. So let's go ahead and save that one. And that completes the second edit. Okay, so here's our final photos. I think they turned out pretty good. Now I try to make it a point when I'm out photographing birds and wildlife that I have a background that is far enough back to where it doesn't introduce any detail or very little detail, because to me it looks quite a bit cleaner when you can isolate the bird like this and like this. And sometimes the environment looks pretty good back there depending on what type of photo you're taking. Like if you're taking a short-eared owl out in the field on a fence, then you might want some of those elements in the background, and it would enhance that type of a picture. So there's several different ways to photograph things. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm just a guy out having fun, taking photos. And these are some of the things that worked for me in the editing process. So I hope this helped you. So there they are. Okay, so that's my basic workflow for editing raw photos in Adobe Camera Raw. I hope you were able to get something from this video. So please like and subscribe and leave a comment with some photo editing tips that you use. Thanks for watching. See ya.